Hi, I'm Dr. Lydia Knudsen, developer of Axial Stability Method, an emerging new chiropractic approach to human biomechanics. In order to understand how we treat the sacroiliac foundation in ASM, we first need to define some terms and understand more fully the biomechanics of the sacroiliac joint. Much of my ability to speak clearly and coherently about the sacroiliac joint comes from the brilliant work of Dr. Rick Sorolla and his Sorolla theory of human biomechanics. I strongly encourage you to check out his website for more information. So, let's start with normal biomechanics of the pelvis and sacroiliac joints. Human bipedal gait is a reciprocating movement sequence of gravitational impact and rebound. With each heel strike, we must absorb the force of gravity and then rebound for the swing phase of gait in preparation for the next heel strike. While one leg is absorbing gravity, the other is rebounding. To understand the complex movement that is happening at the sacroiliac joints during this process, I want to introduce the words nutation and counternutation. Nutation is the movement of the sacrum and ilium during shock absorption. During heel strike, at the bottom point of gravitational impact, the weight of the upper body presses down on the sacrum, causing it to move anterior-inferior, and at the same time, ground reactive forces traveling up the leg cause the ilium to move superior and posterior. The massive interosseous ligament on the posterior aspect of the joint winds up like a spring, absorbing the two opposing forces. So while all this is happening, the opposite sacroiliac joint goes into counternutation. Because remember, this is a ring structure. Whatever movement is happening on one side, there will be the equal and opposite movement happening on the other side, just like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Okay, so counternutation, driven by a completely different set of muscles, is the anti-gravity rebound phase of gait, when the sacrum moves posterior superior and the ilium anterior inferior. So let's do that again because I really want you to get this. Nutation is like this. On the other side, right nutation, like that. And it's a bilateral movement that is reciprocating. So during nutation, at the peak shock absorption moment of the sacroiliac joint, it's at its most vulnerable, and indeed, this is when most injuries happen. And once the joint is injured, the muscles that drive that joint into shock absorption become inhibited through the ligamentomuscular reflex. I'll talk more about the ligamentomuscular reflex in the recalibrating muscles video. So through this reflex, the nervous system protects the joint from further damage by limiting nutation and facilitating counternutation on this side. So if this is what Fred is doing, then what is Ginger doing? The opposite sacroiliac, the compensatory side, is forced into a state of constant nutation because the counternutators, the anti-gravity muscles, have also been inhibited to protect that side. So both sacroiliac joints are now compromised. The original injury side has inhibited nutators, and the compensatory side has inhibited counternutators. So now we have a reciprocating shock absorption system that is greatly compromised, and the job of shock absorption must move out the kinetic chain. Over time, this can greatly affect joints far from the original injury. Additionally, the compensated side, the one hovering in constant nutation, is now at greater risk of injury because remember, the bottom point of nutation is the greatest moment of vulnerability. This compensatory side has now become the more vulnerable side. In ASM, we call this side the side of pelvic compensation. So an LPC is a left pelvic compensation. An LPC is the injury pattern that I've been illustrating throughout this video. If everything were reversed, then we would have a right pelvic compensation, an RPC. This complex injury pattern is what we treat in the second phase of the ASM protocol because it is the most fundamental injury to the biomechanical system.